Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And if you're a Reform UK supporter, I've got more good news for you. And it's becoming a weekly thing now to give massive updates on the Reform UK's election wins. So after last week winning its first ever seat in the northern town and Labour stronghold of St Helens, the Reform Party have just won another councillor by-election, taking it off the Labour Party again, this time in Kent. So 18-year-old Kieran Mitchell, who stood for Reform for his first ever time, beat Labour with 272 votes to Labour's 200 votes. Labour was actually pushed into third place by an independent who finished second on around 220 votes, meaning if it had been a one-on-one race, the Reform Party would have near enough doubled Labour's vote. For people who don't know, what you will see most commonly when an independent stands, it tends to split it with other anti-establishment groups or parties like the Reform Party. And last week in St Helens was quite a historic moment. The St Helens Council has been held by Labour since it was existed, and the Reform Party still won a seat there in a place that they shouldn't have been able to win a seat. And this is what we're seeing up and down the country. We're seeing the Reform Party take over Labour nationally. We're seeing them win by-elections on a weekly basis from Labour seats. And if it couldn't get any worse for Keir Starmer, he also lost another seat on the same day to the Conservatives in Dudley. And it's because the Labour Party, it has been so long since they've been in power, I think people genuinely forgot just what left-wing dictators they really are. Or should I even say left wing? Or do they pretend to be left wing but are really champagne socialists who want to tell you how to live your life? And people have had enough of it. And quite frankly, they've had enough of the Conservatives too. So very interesting things are happening up and down the country. Now, where the Reform Party are doing amazing things, where UKIP couldn't necessarily do it, is they're starting the right way at the bottom, at the local elections, at the very front and centre of the community, and building the way up. So 4.5 years of winning these by-elections and local elections, you will see a people's army then ready to take on the establishment in 2029. Now, many sceptics of the Reform Party are saying that the Reform Party can't make much of a difference with only 5 MPs. Well, today it has also come out that the pressure from the Reform Party on the CPS over the Manchester airport incident has paid off, because the two brothers who assaulted the female officer but haven't been charged since are now being charged by the CPS and will appear in Manchester court on January the 16th. And we all know whether they will admit it or not, they definitely probably won't. But the Reform Party are the ones that made this happen. So just to cast your minds back, we had the incident where a small clip was shown that showed a police officer kicking a man from a Muslim background, by the looks of things, in the head, and there was uproar. This happened at the Manchester airport. It was an armed police officer, and there was protests all around Manchester calling it racism. The family's solicitor was on the news constantly saying that it was racism, and the left wing was shouting out about racism. Now, the Reform Party claimed that the full video was being kept from the public because what it showed and what we eventually saw was that the police officer was assaulted first. A female police officer had her nose broken by one of the brothers. The police officer that then kicked him in his head was an armed police officer. He couldn't put his gun on the floor and wrestle with a man, so in most people's opinions, did the right thing. But the CPS, with its two-tier system, just like the police and the courts, didn't want to prosecute the two brothers, and it wasn't going to do anything. Yet the police officer and his colleague was still under internal investigation. Well, then the Reform Party came out and said it was putting the CPS on notice that it was going to take out a private prosecution. And within a matter of weeks of it now saying it finally is doing it, it's instructed solicitors. What do we see? The CPS take action and charge the two brothers. This shows that you don't have to have hundreds of MPs to make a real difference if you've got the public on your side, and that's something the Reform Party surely have done. And that brings me to my last point nicely. When we talk about the first 2 points with the reform, it leads us to show us exactly why Keir Starmer is cancelling the May elections, or the majority of May elections, for 2025. He is claiming that he is doing this under something called devolution. And devolution is where you merge a lot of councils together under an elected mayor. Here in Manchester, we have Andy Burnham. In London, you have Sadiq Khan. And all the councils of that borough then come under that elected mayor, with each leader sitting on a cabinet to vote things through with the elected mayor. And we're told that this is devolution. Well, before I tell you exactly why it's not devolution, it's a dictatorship, let me just tell you that Keir Starmer is claiming that because he has plans to do this that we've not exactly seen yet in 2027, still 2 years away, that there is no point in having elections this May. Now, some of the areas he's talking about are Lancashire, up here in the north, on the so-called Labour Red Wall that surely will fall, and also the Kent area, where we've just been talking about Reform winning its first by-election there. Now, most polls have Labour losing massively in them areas, and to be pretty honest, up and down the entire country. So Keir Starmer sees an opportunity to shut down these elections, although the changes he may make wouldn't take place for over another 2 years. Now, just to let people know that quite often we see boundary changes in councils where the government changed the borders, so you've got to have an all-out election where all the councils are elected on one day. Even when we know these are coming up, the elections are still held the year before, even if that means you will only get a 1-year term rather than a 4-year term, because that is democracy. And Angela Rayner and other top Labour MPs are arguing that it wouldn't be democracy to hold the elections. Just think about that for 1 minute. It wouldn't be democracy to hold the elections. It would be a waste of taxpayers' money, they say. No, what it would be people's chance to have their first vote on the new government. And we must fight hard to try to keep our democracy and keep our right to vote. Even if you are not a Reform supporter, or you're a Conservative supporter, or even a Labour supporter, the reason why it is so important is because it's our right to vote. And how many more times will we see this happen if this president is set where you can say you've got a plan, you may do something, so you can cancel a local election? And the last point on this I want to talk about is this idea of devolution. So it's being sold to people like it was in Manchester, Liverpool, London, as if you're taking power from the government and you're giving it to the local people. Well, it's actually quite the opposite. And it's an EU plan to create the UK interstates, a plan that has been around for a long, long time. It was first thought up in the 90s under Tony Blair, like most things that took away our democracy was. And the plan was to split the UK up into several different regions and have one person in charge of them regions, so that they could be manipulated into making certain decisions by just getting one person to change their mind. You see, currently, if you take a town like Wigan here in the northwest, you have around 75 councillors voting for 330,000 people. When we went into Greater Manchester, which had 3.5 million people, so 10 times more, suddenly they was represented by just one person. And it's the same in these other regions. You will live in a region with a few 100,000 people with probably 50 to 100 councillors. Effectively, they will have no more power, and you will have one elected mayor for several million people. And they don't make the decisions on the national level like they're trying to tell us. They're making the decisions which a local council usually would. So it's not taking power from government, it's taking power from small councils and giving it to one individual. And that is why it is the very opposite of devolution. It is a dictatorship. It's very easy to control the masses when you only have to control one elected mayor. But please let me know what you think about the rise of reform and this another by-election victory. What do you think about the CPS now taking charges against the two Muslim men? And do you agree with me that this is down to the Reform UK party's doing? And what do you think about the local election 2025 possibly being cancelled? Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.